So do you believe that ancestors actually communicate with you through the dead? That's one of the questions I think today that myself and Ian Doherty, my expert friend, they are expert medium and good friend, very good friend.
Thank you, Martin.
Ian Doherty. How are you keeping, Ian?
I say I'm fine. I'm very, very positive. I'm getting back into my fitness. I've got my spinning bike arriving later today, so I'll get on with that. The artwork creative process is going through the roof, and I'm absolutely loving it. How's things with yourself then, Martin?
Yeah, really good. It's midsummer, and this time of year is quite special, certainly with my beliefs. And I wouldn't say I am pagan or Wiccan or anything like that, but I certainly feel the flow of the earth, I think I'd like to say.
Yeah.
So midsummer is very, very strong and potent time. So it's weird dreams and weird stuff happening. Yeah. It also revitalizes you for the year ahead. So where some of us get revitalized with the new year, I kind of feel revitalized that the midsummer's here. I know that winter's on its way, and I kind of get that wintry warm feeling, thinking I'm not a summer person. I don't know about you, but I can't stand this massive heat when it comes.
Yeah,
So.
I find it a little bit difficult working in the heat, but that's something we can touch on if we have time, of course. I don't mind the cold. I just don't like getting wet all the year time. But
we've had plenty of that.
Oh, I know, but the cold, I do sort of get on with it better, to be honest.
So sort of on a magical perspective, if you want to call it that, energy-wise, shall we say, is bouncing at the moment. And this morning you were saying 22 countries we're teaching in at the moment.
Yes, we've just had Latin America join. So we've now got 166 students speaking about 6 languages in 22 different countries.
Wow, absolutely amazing. And if anybody's interested in our mediumship course, it is on Udemy called Communicating with Spirits, a psychic mediumship course. You can find it on the link on the podcast. If you go on now, it's a very, very dirt cheap price. It's I believe Udemy is offering it at 80% off the recommended retail. So it's around $10, £10, that sort of price. Mm-hmm. You can follow the link on the podcast. So let's get back. So this week's been a bit of a strange one, and I kind of put it down to midsummer and the weird energy. But Spirit was talking to me about ancestors and communicating with ancestors, or communicating with friends and family who've actually passed. And incidentally, when I started talking to you, you was also talking about how somebody believed that a past parent was her spirit guide. And I think shall we touch on that first? And from your perspective, Ian, let's say, obviously all my grandparents have passed, my father's passed. Why can't they be my spirit guide?
Communicating with spirit. I'm a nosy person. I like to ask why questions. So I have a good sit down. I have a talk with spirit. I've talked to spirit whilst one of my friends has been in trance. So you get it where it's not your friend's opinion, it's more from spirit. And the general thing over here, please, is almost like a sort of a group entity, whereby grandparents, parents and children will be sort of learning the same lessons, or being a teacher, pupil, whatever, for those 3 generations. So at all points, the person who says that my grandmother is my guide has been alive at the same time as her grandmother was also alive, and for that reason cannot be your guide, because guides are with us as soon as we are born. Maybe even if you think about it, having the soul or the spirit is put into the body whilst in the fetus, at a later stage, and part of our energy, that gives us vitalizing energy within this physical world, is our spirit within us. So to have your child born, then the spirit is in situ, so our guides are also in situ, so therefore it cannot be anybody who is living. And I would say here, please, probably going back over to great grandparents, I would say no to that, because the grandparents would be in that cycle with their grandparents, their children and their grandchildren, which in actual effect are probably your parents. So that link is still there. So it's not until the whole sort of link finishes, going back to the spirit world, it's having a talk about things with your guide or other family members, or we did this, we did that, I didn't quite get what I was wanting, or whatever, you know. So for those reasons, a family member is likely, well, very, very likely not to be your guide.
I think we've touched on this before in a previous podcast, haven't we, where we were saying that certainly from your point of view, as an explanation from a spiritualist point of view, is that you're on a journey, but you're also on a journey through life and death, and you are with a bunch of particular people, and you are reincarnated into it's almost like a very similar to a Buddhist philosophy, that you're learning as you go through life, that this time you must learn pain or suffering, or this time you must learn humility, you must learn, and at the end, when you pass and obviously meet your family members again, then you discuss what happened and how did your soul progress and how did you go forward.
Yes.
So that is that in spiritualist teachings then? Is that something that you've found when you've discussed this with spirit yourself?
It is more so that I found in talking to spirit, because it isn't necessarily talked about in spiritualist teachings. And bearing in mind, you have different tutors who are doing the courses, or they run in a circle in churches, so it's more their slant, and within the sort of the confines of the 7 principles of the Spiritualist National Union. If you follow that, or if it's Christian spiritualism, then it's going to have that Christian slant. So really it's come over from spirit side of life, really, from guides telling you, well, this is what happens, we undergo this process, we work with you here, we help you to do there, which is why when we take our passing, there's always a guide with us, as well as it is when we have our birth. And that person, commonly called the gatekeeper, helps us into this world, helps us out of the world. You hear a lot of time of, it must be really difficult if there's a difficult passing of a person, if there's a sudden passing of a person. Do they know they've died? Do they know this place? It is very, very much coming over spirit. And when that happens, I do feel that we have to let go the physicality, because spirit within a person can choose to stay there to the very end, go through any sort of trauma, whatever, or can be sort of moving away as that trauma happens, so they don't feel it, so there's loads of things. But I do feel one of the things, and this is not having a go at anybody, we are looking at a passing just solely from a physical point. It must be this, it must be that, when really the spiritual element is probably at its strongest at that point, when the spirit leaves that physicalities, the confines of a smaller space, as one of my guides used to say when I was in trance. I thought there'd be more room in here.
It's interesting what you were saying. Just to go back to what you were saying about that we have this journey, and that we have to learn, and we have to come back to various points, and what have we learned. And that's very much in sort of coordinates with a lot of my beliefs as well, and the work that I've done with ancestors. I do believe that our ancestors, and we might be going back to great grandmas, we might be going back even further, but they will communicate with you, or you can communicate with them, and you can kind of reach out to these people to try and learn from them,
yes, definitely,
or to actually ask for their help. And also as well is, let's say there's been difficult relationships. So if you had a difficult relationship with your great grandparents, or a friend of mine, he is working with an ancestor of his who was on the slave ships. The gentleman's an African American, and he told me that some of the anxiety and issues that he's had, he's worked with his ancestors, and this is through meditation, this is through working with spirit, with various other ways, but he's able to feel healing and be able to by communicating with his ancestor and understanding the pain, the feelings, it's helped him, because he's always felt that he's carried that around. So it's helped him release that. And I know other people as well where they've communicated with their great grandparents or grandparents, where there's been a lot of pain in the family or abuse, and try to, again, try to break down and try to communicate with the ancestor and try and work out why this happened. Why did this happen? Why was the damage done? The interesting thing is the more I talk to various people who are working with ancestors, and I've worked with, and I talk with shamans or shamans, and I've worked with people who do African folk religions. What you tend to find is that often the ancestors that you communicate with, they are accepting of what happened, but they also will give this feeling that they feel very sad about what's happened, and they will discuss more. So it's a great way how spiritualism works in all its different formats, and how we communicate with spirit. And I think all of us could do better in working with our ancestors, in that, recognizing what they went through, or even meditating and actually trying to, communicate with our great grandparents and see what senses we get from them, how we feel, and what their journey and what their feelings are. I think it's really interesting that what spirits convey to you is very, very, very similar to a lot of the beliefs and systems that I kind of find myself in.
It is. It's very interesting. I've noticed, my analytical head, I've noticed in a lot of my readings, when a person is perhaps wanting to hear from mum or dad or brother or sister, and you get uncle or auntie come through, but they're the ones who can give them the advice that they needed because they've been through a similar experience. So that is a little bit of what you were saying, but not in the same depth. You might have an uncle who was very good financially, and then says, perhaps you need to do this, or think about that, or are you again wanting to put over a more practical thing, or even indeed saying, look, you need to slow down, don't work yourself to death like I did, so they're always giving that guidance, but based on experience that they've went through, that you were going through, if that makes sense.
And that is exactly like, it's interesting how it works together. And often we get people saying, how can I have an ancestor practice, or how can I do that? And obviously we talk about how you can communicate with your spirit guide in our course, where we have a particular practice of doing that and building up a rapport with your spirit guide. And I think the first place to start with is your spirit guide.
Yes.
And ask them for their advice. If you're still building up that relationship with your spirit guide, then maybe try and dig out things that relate to a particular person that you're trying to communicate with. And I'm not talking about close family here. We're talking about ancestor. So look for maybe photographs that you can tie into really when you meditate. So if there's an image or a photograph or something like that, and have that photograph lying around all the time, and I think that helps the mindset kind of tweak, kind of tune in really to that person's energy. I'm loosely trying to describe this process, but I think by having a particular ancestor that you are trying to contact with, whether it's their name or something like that, and set up a little area for them where you can walk past in the day and think, oh yeah, my ancestor, and over time you will start to get communication with those, and they are very, very helpful, because 2 years ago I was in a particular situation, and I really needed help from somewhere, and it was spirit, and it was my ancestors that came through for me, and their work continuing now has really helped me. And it's just knowing that they're there, like my guide, like spirit, and the ancestors are there to help me as well. There's never any negative towards you. They're not there to kind of destroy you or anything like that, are they?
No, no, there isn't any judgment at all, and this is where probably what was said earlier, we are still looking at that physical, when yes, the person was this personality and that sort of behaviour, but maybe that is what you need, somebody who is a little bit more stricter or more logical, or is asking you the opposite way to just loosen up a little bit, But there is always somebody in the family who will know about that person, so you can always go to them and say, oh, did this do this? Did he do that, or did she do so and so? And when it's verified along with the information that you've been given, then it's a boost to you, and it's a boost to think, well, yes, the communicative process alongside my guide is working well, And echoing your thoughts, Martin, it really is, the first step is to build a stronger rapport as you can with your guide, and then communicating with people, with your family as well as other people's family, will be all that much easier. I think people tend to rush in a little bit quick, and talking to ancestors, particularly if you want to go looking into a family tree, then I just think it's brilliant, because you are getting, you can get information from, let's say, your great great granddad on telling, oh yes, I had three sisters, I had two brothers, and can fill in that family tree a little bit more, give you more sort of insight, But certainly going, without going off track and coming back to what Martin was saying, it is an invaluable process whereby it helps you, not saying that it's a me. When we are in need, our guides always help. They always give that support because they are wanting to. And I do feel here, please, it's because family members, distant family members going back to great grandparents, they, even if they were passed over before you were born, they will know of you. They would still want to be helping within your family, as because in essence it could be helping their grandchildren to help their grandchildren, if that makes sense. But putting it into a way, they still show a vested interest. So spirit will, if you ask, spirit will help, definitely.
And again, that resonates very strongly in what I was discussing earlier about sort of the folk magic sort of area, where calling out to an ancestor has a vested interest in you and in your family, and it's a positive experience, and a positive experience can be you letting go of ancestor anxiety, that, like my friend whose great grandparents were slaves, and he's had this anxiety, and it's really, it's led him close to a nervous breakdown. He's been able to release this now. He's been able to accept it and release it. It's been a part of the healing process. It's still part of his identity. He accepts that now, and rather than letting his life be ruled by the anxiety, he's now changed it to a force of good, in that he's now able to talk about this far more, and is able to help other people. So when we say it's for a positive experience, at the time you can say, well, oh no, I'm really upset, why are they talking about this or whatever. It's because for the healing process. And if you're carrying the anxiety of past generations, then you need to think about the future. And that's what the ancestors are really about. Even though they're from the past, they want a constructive and effective and a positive future for you. So that's why they come and help. And I mean, certainly from my experiences, when we first started writing the course, I was aware of a guy called Joseph, who's one of my guides, and he only steps in when I start writing. It's like, it kind of kicks me along. But when I started doing the DNA and I did my DNA testing, and I found that there was a lot of links in the Balkans, Slovenia, and moving up toward around sort of Germany and France, and then up towards Sweden. It was interesting because Joseph told me this 18 months previously, that he was from this area, that he was sort of connected to me. And now I've asked him if he is a family member, and he says no. But he did. I do believe he had a connection with my family at that time.
I see. Interesting.
So he was aware of my family. But the reason why he's working with me is nothing to do with my family, but he was aware of my family. So there's more work to be done there. But it's interesting because 18 months previously, spirit had come to me with somebody who kind of had a connection, semi sort of connection. And one of the fascinating things for me is I always used to have, and I used to call her the gatekeeper whenever I started giving readings to somebody. And when I mean readings, messages from spirit, sorry, I always had this little girl come in front of me, and she was kind of introducing people to me, and then I would describe this person, and it would be somebody's family member. Interestingly, I could not hear her name. I couldn't connect with it. And Ian, you said it was her name was Millicent, and as soon as I heard Millicent, it was like a big light bulb appeared, sort of thing. And I don't know why I didn't get it, and I know why is because the name Millicent means 1,000 saints, and in French, and 1,000 saints. And because I work with a lot of saint energy, and I work Saint Joseph's and Saint Teresa, I would not have accepted that from a spirit guide. Yeah. They said Millicent, I'd have said no. But you told me that, and then you've gone and got a cat, and her name was
called Millie.
Millie. So it's funny. I mean, you can say that you're looking for coincidences, but it's amazing. Since I started working with you, it's amazing how we can sense energies. We can, we can feel that there's a strange lull or drop in energy, and it's.
Well, there is. We often send a text to each other. Are you all right?
Yeah. It's. But I think that's all a part of what we're working with. I think it's all, it's all consciousness, and whether we want to connect with an ancestor, or whether we want to connect with our guide, or whether we can sense energy that's around us. It's all connected. What I'll do, Ian, is I'll pull together a little bit of ancestor worksheet for people to download. I'll send that to you as well, and we can allow that. We can let everybody download that from our Facebook page.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. I might give it a try myself if and let you know what happens.
It'd be interesting, actually. Yeah, we could do a follow-up podcast, and also as well is if anybody else communicates with their ancestors or works with their ancestors, or then please let us know as well. We'd be interested to know how you work with them, and whether it's from a spiritualist point of view or maybe a different point of view. I think that will have introduced working more with ancestors, not just your spirit guides for people, just to give people more of a broader scope. So
on the ancestor there, I was one of my guides was just talking to me there. I'm Welsh born in North Wales. I joined the forces. I ended up over in Lincolnshire, where I am now, and my eldest sister was doing a family tree, and then one of my younger nieces sort of picked it up and really ran with it down one side of the family. And it turns out that most of my ancestors originated from 17 miles down the road.
Listen to this. I've got a similar story. We went to Cumbria, and I booked a place at Grisdale, which is in the middle of Cumbria. The only reason why I picked it was kind of in the quiet area near Windermere. We stayed near a village called Crossathwaite, and it turns out that's my family's ancestral home.
Yeah.
And they had a lodge there and everything like that. It was like, what? It was bizarre. I didn't find out until 5-10 years ago, and I found the farmhouse where they used to live, and it was literally within sight of this random place that I chose for a holiday. One of the places that I had a lot of history with was Chillingham Castle. Chillingham, again, when my grandfather, who was Buckinghamshire born and bred, when he did research, he found out that my family was actually the blacksmiths for Chillingham Castle.
Oh, bloody hell.
It was like, what? So yeah, I've got blacksmiths on both sides, and it's weird, but that's the thing, though, is how much is there an influence, or I don't want to say influence, but how much are we connected to the consciousness that we end up living in places that are probably connected in some way to your family far more than you realize?
Yeah, I think this is the case.
Yeah, I don't want to say influence because then that implies that we're getting influenced by spirit for some reason. But I think it's one of those things that if your family have lived in that particular area, then you somehow you reconnect to that particular area. And in fact, where I live now in North Yorkshire, there are far more people with the same surname as me than I ever did when I lived in Sheffield.
Yeah.
So it's bizarre how that works. It's kind of, hang on a minute, have I kind of gone back to the place where a lot of my family was living? But I don't know.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I feel far more at home in the energies around where I'm living than I ever did in Wales. I loved growing up in Wales, but I just knew that, I mean, I left Wales when I was 18.
Yeah.
So really, I just knew I was going elsewhere, and I've been, like I say, I've been looking to find a place for a spiritual retreat, and I don't want to move out of Lincolnshire, so there must be. And when you were saying all of that, then my guy said, "Well, why do you think you're here?" And like I say, a lot of family are from this area, so maybe I'm going to be moving closer into that. It could be to do with this type of work.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally. Yeah, so everybody, if you want to message us or let us know if you've had worked with your ancestors, that would be good. And it's a bit of a short podcast, but we just wanted to kind of introduce kind of working with ancestors and also just to try and clear up that your family members are not going to be your spirit guides.
Definitely.
It's not going to be a question of that. As Ian said, your spirit guide is somebody who was attributed to you when you were born. It's not going to be your grandparents or anything like that, but they might communicate with you to offer advice or to help you. So don't be confused about that. Okay, well, I hope everybody enjoyed it. And we'll be back very, very soon. Thank you very much, everybody who's left reviews for us on iTunes and Spotify and everywhere else. It's really appreciated. It helps us
very much.
It helps us on so many different levels, not just to boost our ego or anything, but it helps us just get out there. Really, the more reviews we have, the more we appear on search engines and things like that, on iTunes and things. So.
Yeah.
Any little bit helps. It really does. So thank you very much, everybody. And thank you, Ian.
Yes, thank you, Martin. And thank you, everybody else in listening land. Bless you.